what are the main opportunities that you're seeing in emerging markets, specifically in LATAM?
Assets to have if you want to cash into a local currency, and if you want to use some DeFi on Celo to hedge. I think certainly from my travels and conversations with people in LATAM, and it's just very, very clear that that's not always the case, and that is fundamentally why people are excited about crypto, giving everyone in the world a financial infrastructure that kind of feels like what people in the US take for granted, and we can do that.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze what's happening in crypto in Latin America. Today we have Marek Olszewski. He's the co-founder of Celo and the CEO of Labs. I'm really excited because we've been building with Celo for some months, and we go way back, and we're going to tell the story of what we've been building for the past years on Celo. And also Celo has had a big narrative around stablecoins, emerging markets, Latin America. Kush couldn't make it to this recording today, so it's going to be Marek and me. Marek, how are you, man? Thank you for coming to Frontera.
Oh, I'm good. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. So let's deep dive right now. So could you tell me a little bit of the story of Celo? How did you come to the idea? You just turned 5 a couple of weeks ago. I saw that you posted a photo of some hike. So I'd love to get the backstory on how did you start at Celo?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Celo's origin, it starts in 2017. My co-founder and I had previously started a company out of MIT, and that company did well. We sold that company, after that whole experience, we took some time off and we reflected on what we wanted to do next, and we really wanted to do something big and impactful, something that we could kind of dedicate the rest of our careers to. And with the first company, we actually rushed into things. It was our first company. We had just met at a class that we were taking together, and we kind of jumped on the first idea. And I wouldn't change anything about that experience because we had a really great outcome. We sold the company for a good exit. But the second time, we wanted to be a lot more intentional. So we actually spent half a year ideating and really thinking hard about what we wanted to do next. And we created a list of 100 different ideas, and we almost did something in telemedicine, which would have been pretty impactful, I guess, during the COVID times. But the more we looked at the opportunity that crypto presented itself when it came to just innovating around what money is, around helping advance financial inclusion, the more we realized that's what we wanted to really, really focus on. And our first idea was to build kind of like a global Venmo on top of Ethereum. This was kind of 2017, 2018. Ethereum, was relatively new. It wasn't processing that many transactions per second. I think at that point there wasn't even a stablecoin on Ethereum. But we felt that things were getting close enough that we could build something that really could level the playing field globally, give everyone access to a US dollar kind of stablecoin, and let them transact globally with anyone in the world. But it was too difficult for us to build that on top of Ethereum at the time. It was too difficult for us to make it easy enough to use for anyone in the world. And so ultimately that took us down the path of building Celo, which is an EVM compatible chain. It used to be an L1, now it's become an Ethereum L2 recently. And the chain basically was the foundation upon which we could then build kind of that really easy to use mobile experience on top of. And so that's the origin story. But a lot of these decisions, a lot of the kind of reasons why we felt really strongly for doing this, I think was rooted in kind of our life experiences. Renee, my co-founder, worked for the World Bank in Venezuela for a good amount of time, and so I think that was really eye-opening for him. And I grew up in Singapore and have traveled a lot throughout my years. Latin America holds a special place in my heart because it's where I proposed to my now wife.
Cool.
We went to Patagonia. And I think it was there where I just saw firsthand, just the impact of kind of inflation ravaging kind of Argentina, the blue dollar market and all the stress that came with it. And I think, it was all of these experiences that I think really ultimately guided us towards kind of this particular idea out of that list of 100 different ideas that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think that when you see the struggles people have in Latin America specifically, for example, in Argentina, you grab a cab and it feels like everyone has a PhD on economics, where in some places of the world they don't even know what inflation is or what, I don't know, devaluation is. When I always love to say in the Frontera podcast that this quote of necessity is the mother of all invention, because basically we have a lot of necessity in Latin America, and we can fix that with different products. Also, Celo's mission is to create a financial system that fosters prosperity for everyone. Okay, and that's reading that mission. It's obvious on why you're so focused on emerging markets. For example, in the Minipay ecosystem in Celo has a big footprint in Africa. The Valora ecosystem has a big footprint in Latin America. So I would love to know, aligned with this mission, what are the main opportunities that you're seeing in emerging markets, specifically in LATAM?
Yeah, great question. I think giving people access to US dollar stablecoins anywhere in the world in a way that's self-custodial, I think is the number one kind of offering that I think the Celo ecosystem does really well. It's interesting. I think the Latin American market, I think as you said, has kind of endured, or some markets especially have endured a lot of inflation, and so many of them really get the value of having access to that, and specifically also the value of having access to that US dollar in a way that is self-custodial. Through my travels in Argentina, I learned about kind of the 2002 pacification policy, right? That auto, where the government mandated the banks convert US dollar deposits to pesos, and since then, a lot of people have been wary of holding US dollars in bank accounts, and instead, hold them either themselves somewhere or in safe deposit boxes. And so, for anybody who has even like a memory of that or has heard about that story, I think the idea of being able to self-custody your stable coins, just feels incredibly powerful and just incredibly useful. It's funny because here in the US, for many people that it just seems like an extra chore, even, right, to have to do it yourself and not to just entrust some bank. In many ways, I think folks in the US are just exposed to a lot of great financial infrastructure, and they kind of aren't really aware that crypto can serve these amazing use cases elsewhere. And so I think that's first and foremost the like an amazing use case. On top of that, you've got obviously remittances, you've got obviously payments, you've got access to different financial primitives that might be harder for someone to access in their local market. The Celo ecosystem has worked really hard to launch a lot of different stable coins for different local currencies. There's a Colombian peso on Celo, actually 2 Colombian pesos on Celo, 2 Brazilian reals in Brazil. I hear there's a Mexican peso coming soon from the Menta protocol, and so these are just really nice assets to have if you want to cash into a local currency, and if you want to use some DeFi on Celo to hedge between these different currencies, or to exchange between these different currencies instantly, any day of the week, any time of the day or night. You can trade against these DeFi protocols. And so that's another really great use case. But then longer term, what's really interesting is that we're seeing a lot of protocols that are focusing on uncollateralized lending, either having launched recently or launching soon. And I think that's what gets me really excited, because with crypto, it's possible to borrow against your own collateral, right? So you could borrow, say Colombian pesos using US dollar stablecoins as collateral. But even better would be borrowing against future income. And we're seeing a whole manner of different protocols working on that now, that I think will be very, very interesting to kind of your audience.
Yeah, yeah, a lot to unpack here, because some of the research that we've done, we realized that you can bucket the crypto, like the world in crypto, into two user personas, like really high level. People that see crypto as an investment and people that see crypto as money. And what's the main difference?
Definitely.
Basically, the main difference is the asset that they hold. So people that hold, I don't know, ETH, Bitcoin, Solana, Celo, whatever, whichever like volatile token, we see those, we have that user persona of investors. And when in your bucket you have an asset as an investment, you don't want to sell it, right? So I think that that's why a lot of people in the US, Europe, and other markets don't understand the power of payments, remittances, and other elements of crypto on stablecoins, because they say people never want to sell their crypto. Well, if they see it as an investment, obviously they'll never want to do that. But when people see crypto as money, it's a whole different use case and user persona, because they might be receiving remittances, they might be converting their pesos to US to stable coins, and basically if that happens, they need to spend them eventually and they need to do payments. So we've seen that there's a big opportunity for that in Latin America. And I would love to deep dive a little bit more on the strategy you have on stablecoins, because a really cool story is that when I was back at Bitso, I was leading the stablecoin initiative with my current co-founder at Bando, and out of like the 300 engineers at Bitso, he was selected to be in the stablecoin initiative because he deployed today CBRL, that it's the first Brazilian stablecoin on Celo. And it was really interesting because he could deploy it in a DAO-centric way through a forum and basically connecting to different oracles to receive the prize. So I think that Celo might be the first network that was actively looking at local stablecoins. And today that's a big narrative. And you were early, that this was 2021, I think 2022. So could you tell me a little bit more on your bet on why local stablecoins in Latin America and emerging markets are so relevant?
Yeah, great question. And I think it comes down to those two personas that you mentioned, right? Like when we thought about what we wanted to do with Celo, it was entirely focused on the second persona, right? Like how can we bring tools, how can we bring software and applications that fill the needs for people who want to use crypto, not as an investment, but for solving their everyday kind of real world problems. And as soon as you are trying to do that for a market that isn't dollarized, then you just need a local stablecoin in order to have a stablecoin that uses a unit of account that makes sense for people in that market. And so I think first and foremost, we wanted to launch these stablecoins so that people could benefit from all of the amazing things that crypto offers, right? The self-custody, the instant settlement, the cheap transaction fees, the fact that it's available globally, the fact that you can use it day or night and transact with DeFi protocols at any time. We wanted people to be able to benefit from all of that, while still being able to reason about things in their local unit of account. And so I think that's first and foremost. Secondly, the FX market, global market, is a very, very big market. There's a lot of trade that happens globally. There's a lot of FX hedging that needs to happen for people to do that well. Crypto as a base layer is a really great platform for the future of all of this FX trading to happen. Again, it doesn't shut down on weekends. It operates 24/7, and so we really see the future of FX trading moving entirely on chain. Initially, obviously, in a smaller part, but eventually in a much bigger way. And we were excited about bringing that to Celo because, one, again, it's a big market, but two, it creates a lot of utility for users on the platform. The more volume happens on Celo for these FX for this FX trading, the better the rates are for your individual who might need it only to send like a small remittance payment back home. And so we were excited about enabling those use cases and trying to drive fees down. And so I think these were the main motivations. And it's true that this is becoming a bigger trend now, but by far, if you look at the number of stable coins, if you look at the volumes happening on dexes between these stable coins, Celo is by far ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, the other day I was doing an analysis to define which assets to include in bundle to spend, and when I looked at the volumes of Celo, like in the Celo network in Uniswap, most of the top 15 assets, top 10 assets are stablecoins. Obviously, CUSD, that's the one that has the most volume, but also I saw the Brazilian real. There's a Zimbabwean, right? There's a couple of stablecoins in Africa.
The Kenyan shilling. There's a Ghana stablecoin. I think there's a Nigerian naira that's going to launch soon as well. And then there's the South African rand, I think, that also launched recently.
Yep. Yeah. So, and it's really interesting because when you have that infrastructure, one of the theses that basically everyone at crypto has, and that we see and understand, is how much easy it is to deploy something when you have liquidity on DeFi instead of trying to build a local liquidity. That's basically a nightmare today. It takes years and millions of dollars of investments, not in infrastructure, but in incentives for market makers. So I think that this movement starts to play out. And I think that there's a missing piece in this, like in the narrative that we're talking. Most of users in emerging markets are mobile users, not web users, right? And I remember also when Celo launched, one of the main value propositions was that it was a network focused on mobile.
100%.
When you experience the Valora wallet, you can understand why is that. It's really simple. It's really like Web2 design in a good way that you don't need to do like all the complexity of private keys and all of those things. So I would love to tell us a little bit on the thesis of mobile in crypto, because today a lot of, if you see volumes, if we do like a value chain or where volumes come from, most should come from desktop because crypto natives trade on desktop. When do you think that this is gonna flip, or is it gonna flip at all? Are we gonna have like complex volume through desktop while millions of users in mobile? What's the thesis on mobile for Celo in emerging markets?
Yeah, it's a great question. So absolutely, we're very focused on mobile, and we were from the get-go, and we worked really hard to build features into the platform that were unique to a chain that was focusing on mobile phones. For example, we had a ZK Snark based like client early on that allowed you to sync on your mobile phone with very little bandwidth and in a fully trustless way. And the reason we focus so much on mobile is again coming back to your two personas. I really love that characterization. For the users who wanted to use crypto for their everyday needs and not for investment or speculation, those users were primarily interested in accessing crypto from their mobile devices. One I would say kind of inspiration for us early on was the WhatsApp chat client. WhatsApp now, of course, is universal. A lot of people, almost everyone in the world uses it. But if you look at kind of the origin story, certainly in the US, it didn't have much traction early on because text messages were free in the U.S. and there was no reason to really use WhatsApp. It was really in emerging markets where WhatsApp got its first kind of foothold, and then because people communicate globally, naturally network effects pulled even people in the US into the application. And so we foresee a similar thing happening for crypto payments. We think it's going to be the people who don't have the the Venmo applications and the Cash App applications that exist here in the U.S. But they'll use things like Valora, like Minipay, and the network effects will grow and grow and grow, such that eventually everyone in the world will be pulled into these types of applications. And naturally, the mobile device is really the way that's really going to happen. And so, yeah, that was our thesis early on, and it's pretty incredible seeing it play out. Between Valora and Minipay, there's over 8 million users who are using these wallets on a regular basis, transacting in stablecoins, and these numbers keep growing and growing. And so, we're just very, very excited for how this is playing out.
I really like that you bring up WhatsApp, because basically WhatsApp is the main way that you communicate basically in Mexico and everywhere outside of the US. I have a friend in the US, and she was using like the text app iMessage, and I was like, what the hell is that? I've never used it, And Lalo, my co-founder, has this great analysis that he says that before 2015, we used to say, "Oh, I'll do an international call," or basically an international call. And today we just say, "I'll call you," and we call each other through WhatsApp. And I love these things in technology when they transform language. You are no more saying, "Let me do an international call." Right now, this is an international call. You're in the US, I'm in Mexico, and if we wanted to do this 10 years ago, it would have cost us maybe thousands of dollars, literally. And today is basically free. So that's how we see the power of stablecoins. Today we say, I'll need to do an international transfer if I wanted to send money from my local bank account to your local bank account. In a couple of years, it's going to be, I'll just pay you. And when you see that a certain piece of technology transforms language, there's a big opportunity for the market to adopt these solutions. We just need to get there in user demand. We just need to get there with better user experience, with a better product. And that brings me also to one of the final elements about building in Celo, because today there are tens, maybe hundreds of layer 2s around the world. A lot of them have liquidity, a lot of them have incentives, a lot of them have different things. We launched Bando in Celo as the first chain, not because of an incentive, just because there was the market pool there, and that was our incentive to launch in Celo. We needed to have an integration, and also the Celo Foundation was really helpful in the deployment. So I would love to hear from you why any builder should focus on Celo, or why should anyone build on Celo when there's so much competition out there for layer 2s?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, if you're interested in building products for that category of people that we've been talking about, people who want to use crypto for their everyday needs and not so much for investing or speculation, then you're just going to find like a very like-minded community, a very like-minded set of other builders who care a lot about solving the same problems that you do. And that just makes it easier to kind of create partnerships and solve some of these big things together. And so I think that's first and foremost the number one reason. Second of all, you mentioned users. I think especially with how much Minipay is growing. Minipay, for those of you in the audience who aren't familiar with it, it's a self-custodial stablecoin only wallet by Opera, the browser company. They're kind of a big public company. They've been around for 30 years. They have on the order of 500 million monthly active users across all of their different products. And recently they launched a kind of Celo-focused stablecoin only self-custodial wallet. called Minipay, and they're now in the process of onboarding kind of all of those 500 million monthly active users into that wallet. And so I have a lot of conviction that they have a really good shot at becoming kind of global Venmo. Likewise, I'm really excited about Valora too, which is our first wallet that we built on top of Celo. Starting all the way back to kind of the original vision, and so we're excited for people to have access to those users, and so if you're interested in reaching those users, then Celo is a really good place to do that. And then secondly, because of this focus, I think we've made different design choices than other chains, which I think make us particularly good for these kind of more payment focused use cases. So, for example, we're one of the cheapest L2s out there, and that's in large part because we use EigenDA. So even if there's a lot of transaction volume on Celo, we'll be able to grow and scale with that load in a way that other L2s won't be able to, because they're using Ethereum for data availability. And so that's really great. So if you build on Celo, you have a pretty good guarantee that your users won't have to pay a lot of transaction fees in the future, even if volumes increase dramatically. We're also really fast. We have 1 second block times, which just makes for really snappy experiences. And then we have a lot of really great protocols to compose with. We've got all of the stablecoins that we talked about. We've got really good liquidity on dexes between those stablecoins. We've invested heavily into on and off ramps that allow you to on and off ramp into those stablecoins globally. And all of that is just really leads to building blocks that solve a lot of problems for existing builders, that allow you to then kind of leverage and build on top of. And then finally, maybe the last point that might be interesting for some folks, Celo also has a really strong commitment to kind of the environment and to protecting fending off climate change. And so every transaction on Celo contributes to a carbon offset fund that programmatically buys and retires carbon offsets on Celo. And so if that's something that's important to you, if you can transact on multiple chains and it's all the same for you, then picking Celo over these other chains means that you're offsetting the carbon that transaction creates. And so I think that's also like just a really nice kind of element of Celo as well.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I can speak firsthand that the thing that we built, the protocol that we built at Bando, is basically EVM compatible, so we could have deployed anywhere. And this was then again, market pool decision. Like to deploy in Celo, it was just, we saw the demand, we tested the demand, it was real. And it's really cool because of the deployment and the client that we're deploying with on Celo, we've expanded our knowledge of the user persona, because we've interviewed tens of people in Africa, and I've got like really fascinating insights. So it's really exciting to see how these things are going to play out. And Marek, thank you for coming to the Frontera podcast. We always love closing the episode just with the guest saying something that you've realized from Latin America or emerging markets that people in the US or other countries don't understand or they found fascinating.
I think this, we touched upon it a little bit before, right? Like I think people really take for granted in the US, the lack of, runaway inflation, and the extent to which they can trust their institutions and banks. And people don't think twice. They hold US dollars in bank accounts, and they transact with Venmo, and they really struggle to see a world where one may not want to do that, or maybe is unable to do that for various reasons. And so I think certainly from my travels and conversations with people in LATAM and honestly all over the world, it's just very, very clear that that's not always the case. And that is, fundamentally why, people are excited about crypto. And to me, that is why I'm excited about crypto. I think, sure, speculating on meme coins can be fun, and, there's a place for that in the world. But, what gets me, out of bed every day in the morning, and what gets me really excited is about leveraging crypto for giving everyone in the world a financial infrastructure that kind of feels like, again, what people in the US, take for granted. And we can do that. And we can do that in a way that is, cheaper than that existing infrastructure. We can do that in a way that is self-custodial and global in nature, and where transaction fees are really low. I'm just really, really excited about that future.
Amazing. Marek, thank you for coming to the Frontera podcast. Where can people find you? Where can people know more about Celo?
Yeah, great question. So I'm on Twitter /X at Marek _. My last name is long, and I worked, to make you not have to remember it or type it. So it's just Marek and then the _ character. Of course, you can follow Celo as well. We're just at Celo. You can learn more at celo.org. And, if you're a builder, I would highly recommend going to docs.celo.org as well.
Amazing. Perfect. So you can find me as Abraham CR on X, and you can follow Frontera and also Bando Cool, the product that we're building. And as always, thank you for listening to Frontera. See you next time.